I'll wait for it to actually start, and then I'll do the roll call just for formality. Okay. The regular meeting of the Transgender Equity Council Policy Subcommittee is now called to order, and I will call the roll to verify a quorum. Melissa Berner.
Here.
Awesome. Emma Gray.
Here.
Awesome. Billy Couric.
Here.
And May Brooks.
Here.
Wonderful. There is a quorum, and we can move forward. Do any of you have anything you want to add to today's agenda? It's pretty simple as of right now. Alrighty. In that case, I will start with just a little bit of update on recommendations progress, as I've been consistently doing. I don't have much that has changed since the last time I gave you all an update. I just wanted to give an update on the charter amendment situations, because those are finalized and have moved a little bit. I know you all wrote in a letter in support of the rent control charter amendment. There were two possible versions of the rent control charter amendment that could be on the ballot. One that was city council kind of shapes the rent control policy, and one that was a more community shaped rent control policy. The city council shaped rent control charter amendment will be on the ballot, is moving forward. You will see it in November. The community shaped one will not be on the ballot. The mayor vetoed it, and the council did not have a veto proof majority to veto his veto. However, there will be a rent control charter amendment on the ballot, and the Department of Public Safety charter amendment that removes MPD as a charter department and replaces it with a Department of Public Safety. The community drafted one will be a charter amendment on the ballot in November. The city had originally written a explanatory note next to the ballot question explaining, going into more detail about what it meant. And yes, for Minneapolis, the campaign and coalition that brought this charter amendment forward sued the city, saying that the explanatory note was biased. They did win. The explanatory note has been removed. The mayor vetoed the removal of some of the explanatory language, and the city council had enough votes to veto his veto. So the simple ballot question with no additional city language will be on the charter, or will be on the ballot in November. You don't objectively need all of those details, but in case you had heard some of that and were trying to wrap your head around what the multiple rounds of vetoes meant, wanted to provide that context in case it's useful. So hey, Davis. Does anyone have any questions on the pile of legal things I just threw at you all?
Well, I do. The last thing I remember reading was in the Saturday paper, and the judge said that they didn't understand the ruling. So I heard the explanation was being removed. So my only question would be, does that mean there's a chance another explanation could come up? Because that's what the judge said. I didn't say you couldn't have that. Oh, there's Davis. Hello.
I have an answer to that.
Yeah.
No, they can't put an explanation on because the ballot language had to be due. They were racing against the clock with the ballot language. So the language is final.
Okay.
There will be no explanation.
All right. Because they missed the deadline. Okay. That's what I couldn't quite remember that part. That got kind of mushy.
Thank you for that, Davis. Does anyone else have any questions on either of the charter department updates or charter amendment updates? Well, sorry. Oh, and then one other update from the recommendations. I was following up on some of the other housing recommendations you all talked about. There had initially been two types of eviction protection City Council was hoping to pass and that you all had written in support of in the recommendations you made last March. One, the first piece of it they already passed. The second piece, which had been passed in St. Paul, and Minneapolis was going to model our legislation off St. Paul. St. Paul got sued by a group of landlords about that legislation, and the landlords won, and the city had to repeal the ordinance. So the Minneapolis City Attorney's Office strongly advised against us trying to pass it in Minneapolis, because it seems incredibly likely that the same thing would happen here, that that ordinance, they don't yet have a way to do it that would hold up in court in a lawsuit. So that is the only other piece, is that of the just cause and pay to quit eviction protections that you all asked for, essentially like pay to quit being enough warning before an eviction notice, and just cause being a limit to the reasons for which someone can be evicted. Pay to quit has been passed in Minneapolis, and just cause is no longer something they're working on because it lost in court in St. Paul. Does anyone have any questions on that? That's what I've got on updates then. So we can move on to the bulk of today's meeting, which is just really kind of working through what you all want out of the council recommendations. And the three kind of questions I came up with to shape this were like, how do you feel about the content that's drafted in there so far? What feels like it's missing? And how do you want to structure the recommendations? Are they organized in the right categories, etc.? But that does not have to be how we shape this conversation. I just wanted to give some structure to it, in case that was helpful. Is there anything else that, like, around these recommendations that folks want to talk through, or that feels like an easier question to start with? If not, let's start with and the recommendations, of course, are linked in the LIMS document, or you all are welcome to use that. The version linked in the LIMS document is a Word doc. You all are also welcome to look at the live SharePoint doc, whichever is easier for you technologically. But I'm just curious how folks are feeling about what's already in there. I know I have left a bunch of comments in the margins as I tried to get a bunch more detail on what's happened since last year. And anywhere you want to start, would love to hear folks' thoughts. Is it easier if we kind of go through comment by comment in there and talk through them together? Would that feel better than just kind of jumping at the document overall?
Track, a question. So the way that it's like formatted now, was this like a copy paste from what was done last March essentially, and we're adding on to it?
Yeah, the current categories are a copy paste from last March, and as you can see, this is still a pretty rough doc, and there are things that, like, other things are not fully worded into recommendations yet, but things that have come up in the past year are just like thrown into their relevant category and need to be worded into recommendations.
Okay.
I guess I will start with, because it's at the top, the eviction prevention stuff was in there. Pay to quit has passed. Again, as I just said, just cause the city attorney's office recommended against, because they would lose it and have to repeal it most likely. I'm curious if anyone still wants to keep any of that bullet point, or if it feels worth just striking that.
This is Davis. I think it probably makes sense to strike it if it, if it's, I mean, that's a pretty, like, this is identical to this and it failed in state court, so.
Sounds good. I have my edits on review, like suggesting instead of final, so I will strike it, but it's still just gonna come through as a suggestion for now. There's also a couple in here that are more vague, that are echoes from other places, like create and preserve deeply affordable housing and improve quality of rental properties. And I'm curious for you all if the like more vague, but still definitely like conceptually aligned recommendations feel useful, or if it feels better in the interest of brevity and council member attention to like cut the things that you don't have very specific asks around.
This is, oh, go ahead.
No, you go first.
Oh, this is Davis again. I mean, I think probably the more specific we can be, the easier it is for the harder it is for them to say, well, whatever do you mean by that? Like that could be a million things. But maybe there is a place for like, these are our overarching things that we think the city should be moving towards. And then these are the specific ways we think you could reach some of them. Kind of like how the 2040 document was built, where it was like, we're gonna do all these great things. And then there was like substance put in underneath. I don't know. That's just one.
Yeah, I second that. I think that just because we have quite a lot to recommend, we could even maybe just put them, like separate them on this document if we want to flesh them out later, or, you know, something to work towards, but keeping them separate and keeping the more specific asks up front, I think would be wise.
Perfect. I am just commenting that for now on the relevant asks, and I can go through and do some reorganizing later based on. Continuing to go through comments. I have also just kind of pulled out places where I think it would be worth highlighting the work the TEC has done in the past year. I think part of what council has asked for out of this in the past is kind of like, what do you want us to do, but also like, what are you working on? And so the other restructure that I and you all can work on, if you feel good with it, is a kind of like, here's what we've worked on. Here are the overall things we want. Here are the specific next steps. And framing it more of that way as well. I'm curious how that feels. Seeing some nods, I'm going to take that as a yes. Continuing to move down the content. Okay, in the training section, I'm just going down my comments to the ones that actually have questions to you all in them. In the training section, there's an ask for more funding to cover both the like intro level gender inclusivity 101 training and a like deep dive 201. Here are concrete steps to improve your department's training. Currently, there is proposed 2022 funding for the 101 training in HR's learning and development budget. You all and Destiny, obviously, as the main liaison, since she's a TEC member who's also an HR staff, and then I are kind of like partnering with HR on this project. So just wanted to clarify for you all and make sure it still felt good that any asks for additional funding for that would probably also be asks for funding specifically into HR's learning and development budget. It wouldn't be trans equity funding. And as is the messy thing with any city budget ask, city council cannot tell HR what programming to fund with their learning and development budget. So you can ask for more funding for their learning and development budget for this project. Unless HR happens to promise it to you, it is not promised that that funding would go towards this specifically. So wanted to kind of clarify like what logistically that ask would look like. and make sure it still felt good with you all, or hear if there's a different way you wanted to go forward with it, or questions you wanted me to ask of HR in advance or anything like that.
Track, can we get around that by maybe funding a trainer specifically, or someone vetted by the TEC, or put it in the language that there is TEC input in that in some way, or like vetting maybe?
So I think HR is very down to work with the TEC on vetting a trainer. The issue is just that the funding asks specifically, like the city council, when they do their budget for the year, does not designate specific contracts. It just says like there is more money in X budget. In this case HR's learning and development budget. So to my understanding, unless anyone knows anything different, I don't think that would be possible.
Okay, so they can't use that funding specifically to employ like a trainer or someone. If they could basically kind of just do what they want with it is the concern here.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that they would necessarily. I just want to be clear that like the language in here, I think, pulled from past recommendations where we thought this would be housed financially in race equity was trans equity funding, and what at this point, because it's housed in HR, what you all would actually need to ask for is more funding for them. And so just wanted to make sure that still felt good, because it's different than what we thought it would look like last year.
So my other question would be, what we're looking for then is a specific kind of language stating, while we appreciate, the value human resources places on whatever it is, the overall topic, whatever you want to call it. We're looking for, our goal is to see specialized focus and training on A, B, and C within that. That's what you're saying? I can ask for that, or I can't ask for that, or that's how I should be helpful to them by asking for it?
Yeah, what I'm saying is you can say that to HR, and that is great. And basically just in the funding ask to council, council cannot designate what HR spends their funding on. So putting this ask into council basically means it would be an especially good idea for Destiny and I, when we're in conversation with the head of learning and development, for anyone else who wants to kind of be pushing the like, we really need this piece, and we ask for you all to get more money. If they do get more money, totally up in the air to do this particular piece.
So the idea would then, if we can be helpful to them, since you can't tell them how to spend their money, you can only strongly suggest and recommend this is the outcome of which we'd like to see.
Yes.
Programming under this umbrella, or intersectionality here, here, and here.
Yes.
All right.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. I got you.
Thanks for clarifying.
Okay.
How does that feel? Do y'all still want to move forward with that ask?
I feel like if you're confident that HR wouldn't have a problem working with us on that, I would say, yeah, it's worth it. Because I think that's a big deal. So I don't have a problem leaving that in personally.
I would say I'm confident that if HR feels like they have the capacity to move forward with a 201 training, they will work with the TEC on it. I'm not 100% confident that HR will feel like they have the capacity to move forward with a 201 training. The chances of city council giving them the funding are also pretty slim, so it feels like maybe fine either way. But yeah, that's the barrier I'm potentially seeing, and that I don't even think us trying to like get a promise is going to be fully effective, just in that as the like return to work shifts a million times and things like that, folks in HR have had to change everything they're doing a bunch. So it would be beyond just them being like, yes, okay, we will commit to you that this is a priority. I will leave that in for now, though, based on what Billy just said, and no other feedback from anyone else. But let me know if you think differently. And looking through the last few comments, I don't see any other comments that are asks to you all. I know that some of you all are looking at this document right now too. Is there anything else you're seeing in here that you have questions about, or that feels like it should be more specific or framed differently?
Under safety and healing and community, kind of that bigger bullet point, the city council support the creation of a Department of Race and Equity. We have that insert number ongoing. Can you like expand on that a little bit, I guess, Track?
Good catch. I fully forgot that was in there. I was just looking at the comments on the side. Yeah, I will hopefully have more updates for you all on this by the end of this week. But the context I'll give is there has been an ongoing conversation. I'm going to find out on Thursday, theoretically, more of where that conversation's at about turning the Division of Race and Equity into its own department, instead of housing it as a division within the city coordinator's office. That would theoretically provide more authority, and just the capacity to be involved in different things that would hopefully also come with more funding. The piece around insert number here, the piece around the trans equity funding here that has the insert number, comes partially from a lot of conversations I've been having recently around the fact that the summit itself alone costs far more than the $15,000 of annual trans equity funding you all get. The summit is primarily funded by the fact that we charge for tabling at the Career and Resource Fair, and the large majority of our tablers pay some amount for that, and that covers the rest of the cost of the summit. But that's not generally how we run city programming. And most council members probably don't know that the trans equity work actually costs far more than the budget they give it each year. So it is truly up to you all what number you would want to ask for there. I don't have a concrete vision because for two reasons. One, because we are funding the summit successfully right now on tabling fees. So it's not like I have a like, oh, we have a $10,000 gap and I can tell you that's exactly what to ask for. And two, because I am one of two people in my division right now. Everyone else has left. A lot is up in the air. It feels very hard to predict the work long term enough to be like, oh, I'm forecasting our budget for the next 3 years and I can tell you that we need X. I understand that all of those would be useful. I really don't have hard numbers for both of these reasons, but it is very possible that if city council heard that the budget they are giving the trans equity work actually fully does not cover the trans equity work at all, they would be open to increasing that budget by at least another $5,000 or $10,000. This is really small amounts of money in the scale of the city's budget. And so if you all either have a like, we want to be able to build out a part of the summit that doesn't yet exist, or run programming a couple more times a year, and we think another $5,000 or $10,000 would cover presenters and practitioners for more year-round programming, or there are funds we need for the outreach we do at tabling, etc. This is the place where some of that ask could go. And I'm tossing it partially to you all to hear if there are things you would want to see, even if you don't have a hard number you would attach to those, because enough is in flux right now that I don't have like a really detailed plan that I can present to you all of what I'm trying to do and why we can't afford it. That was a really long answer, but hopefully helped.
No, that was helpful. Thank you. I think that like format wise, that might be a good place to like insert the cool things that the TEC has accomplished and like getting a full-time person on board and, you know, the recommendations that we've made previously to kind of, I don't know, champion the cause if we do ask for a certain amount of money. And I'm terrible at money, so I don't know like exactly what number to insert either, but if somebody is financially savvy and wants to, I don't know, run some numbers, I don't think that a couple $1,000s, like anything under, you know, $50,000 is really pennies, I think, in the city budget in the grand scheme of things. So I don't think that that's like a hard ask at all, personally.
And I will also say, like, it is objectively my job to run the numbers. I just have not felt like I had enough information to run them on. So also, if you all have like, these are the things we would want to be doing, also feel free to throw that out and I can try to attach numbers to it. I have just not taken a shot at this number yet.
Do you guys think that the tabling at these events like we did Saturday and Pride help in the overall scheme, even though we're mainly Minneapolis based? Do you think it can help like the state and the county as a whole? It's like we lead the way to start attending. How many events do we attend? Do we attend any other kind of events as TEC?
I feel like we're generally tabling at like 2 to 4 events per year right now, which is not to say that we couldn't do outreach at more. It's partially been a like trying to figure out what are the best priorities. My experience tabling has been that we connect with folks from outside of the city as well who get ideas to bring back to where they live. But that the biggest impact is definitely around getting more Minneapolis residents connected to the work. And also like folks from outside of the cities, particularly now that a lot of it is virtual, attend the summit. So that is a place where we concretely reach people and they get involved.
Yeah, because both at Pride and at last Saturday is like it was very Minneapolis centric, and I think most of the people that came here aren't even actually people that live in Minneapolis anymore. So it was like, how can we be relevant to everybody else, or do we just kind of stick our focus into Minneapolis? But I think the work we do will trickle out. This may actually be the one trickle down thing that works, because as we're the biggest in the state, we kind of start setting policy. If we can get St. Paul, does St. Paul have any kind of equity council?
No, Duluth just started something that I think is like queer and trans and two-spirit more broadly. I forget exactly how they're defining it, but that's the only other city I know of off the top of my head, which definitely doesn't mean it's the only other city that has.
I know St. Cloud doesn't, because there were some people at St. Cloud Saturday and they mentioned they didn't have anything like that. So I guess find out how we can encourage other cities to start. If we can't go to the state, go. Does the state have anything?
I don't know for sure.
Well, track. This is May. There are only 2 things I can think of. One was, as was previously stated, it seems the council is really good at tabling and showing up at events and having a presence or making its presence known. The other thing is something the group was discussing regarding past participation in these type of events. The thing is, if you are the biggest and the splashiest, people expect you to kind of know things, like how to help their kids or where to go for counseling, whatever else. So what I was going to suggest is if you wanted to run the numbers on something, why wouldn't you run the numbers on someone who could perhaps set up kind of a website or an all-inclusive, for lack of a better phrase, like repository of information and resources that this council has touched of those organizations. Something that in the event that somebody wanted to go, or you wanted to go to the next table event and you wanted to have resources, you wouldn't, whoever was there could go to said repository via app, and be able to at least start the search or give that person some ideas without anyone necessarily being on the spot. It's kind of like you would be the Google source, so to speak. But if you could find someone who could set something up like that, that would be kind of nice, I think, where you would get credit for it. The council would get credit for it, you know, for having that information or knowing about that information and then re-funneling that someplace. That might be kind of nice. And see, that's something that you could come up with numbers. I can see that being a great project for a person who is in graduate school. You could fund it for their big senior project, and then they'd get a product and you get a product at the end of it. You know, that's what I was thinking.
That's an awesome idea. And the city has summer internship programs that work with high school students, undergrad students, and grad students that often are around projects like that. So funding an intern from one of those programs to do that kind of work could definitely be an avenue and an ask, and would requires me finding out more about what's happening with staffing in our office, which I will hopefully find out Thursday to figure out what conversations we've had around next summer, if any.
Mm-hmm. But that will give you something, especially for those types of opportunities. That would be really, really great, because then you could get partnerships within the city that would really want it to be successful, so that all the way through everybody would have a win.
I think that's a really good idea, May. I also think that the city specifically is so big on data and like just having data that's such a good thing
Right.
to bring up if we ever need to like, you know, in terms of recommendations or requesting something, like we have something in our back pocket that we can just pull out. Like statistics take you so far nowadays. To have like a record of anything would be, and also just visibility wise, you know, it kind of plays in our court to kind of show that. So I support that idea.
Awesome. I've got that written down. Do folks have other things they would want us to be asking for funding for, and or other comments on the content that's already in these recommendations? If not, I guess the next question is, oh, May, I think I'm echoing out of your device for some reason when you're unmuted. Thank you. Sorry about that. If not, I think the next question is there anything that feels missing in here? Either like a specific policy or just a big kind of area of focus that, even if you're not sure how to language it into policy, you would want these recommendations to speak towards more?
This is Davis. Is this a place where we want to mention or put something about the supplier diversity conversations we're having, or is that not here? The like adding.
No, I think that's a great idea. It is in here, but like hidden in a further indented bullet in a part that has not been fully formatted yet. But yes, that should definitely be here and needs to get pulled out and made clearer. what else feels missing to folks?
For the safe use site, does St. Paul have a safe use site program? Am I making that up?
They don't that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Um,
Maybe we could just include that if St. Paul had one, but I can't, I think I'm making that up. I don't know if St. Paul does have one, but that'd be wise to put like an example of where that's worked in the past. I guess it's not trans specific, but
This is Emma. I don't think they do have one.
okay, maybe they were just talking about it.
yeah, I'm not finding anything. I think Emma's right. And the last conversation I have for you all, if no one else has anything else that's missing, is so I know we talked a little bit about like, let's highlight TEC wins, and then within each category, kind of frame an overarching ask, and then specifics from there, which are edits. I can work to make at some point soon, and if anyone beats me to reformatting any of that, please, 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 please do. I would love that. And beyond that, are there other things structurally here that you would want to change, either in terms of what the categories are or anything else?
Should we just change it to community safety and healing? Instead of safety and healing and community?
Perfect. Make that edit. I will go through as soon as I can, and start to make some of the changes you all talked about, and also start to accept the things and track changes now, so that this is an easier document to kind of read through. And we'll continue to, I will send it back out to you all once I've done that. And please, please continue to take a look. And particularly if you're someone who's really good at like saying things concisely, please feel free to reformat anything in here. I have done a lot of language support on here, and I'm not usually good at saying things concisely on the first try, and know that this document would benefit from that. So take a stab at it in whatever way works well for you. But that is all that we had on the agenda for today. Does anyone have any other questions about the recommendations or anything else? If not, we can adjourn a little early. Thank you all so much, including Melissa's cat, for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Have
everybody.
a good week.
Thanks.
Take
Bye.
care.